Ghosts, cryptids, and UFOs. What do those all have in common, you may ask? Well, they're the topics of these real life encounters. What's up, everyone? This is your ghost host with the most, Project Zero Kram. And on this episode of Parasite, I'm joined by the hauntingly talented Danie Dreadful, who starts us off with this ghost encounter. Check her out in the description down below. And while you're down there, hit like and subscribe for more bone-chilling stories. Now, let's get spooky.
This one time, I was invited to a party where there would be much imbibing, so I was intending to stay the entire night. Well, there was less consumption than anticipated, so even though I got permission, I had just turned 21 a few months prior, and my dad wasn't yet used to the idea that I would be drunk. Anyway, I got back around 6 a.m., and my dad is pissed.
What the hell? Dad? That damn ghost attacked your sister last night. You should have been here.
Yeah, I should stick around just in case something from another dimension wants to stop by.
I inquired to my sister what had transpired, and this is what she said. She was talking on the phone and began to get this feeling of dread, so she wanted to get into the room and close the door, but had to get ready for bed first. As she was doing this, there was a stack of folded laundry sitting neatly on a rocking chair. While she's getting ready, she can see the chair from the bathroom. She noticed movement and watched as the entire stack of towels fell off the chair, which had a seat that sloped to the back of the chair. These clothes couldn't just fall forward naturally. Disturbed but not yet fearful, she proceeded to restack the laundry and then continued preparing for bed. The feeling of dread intensified as she watched as the towels fell again, but with enough force to move them a short distance away from the chair. That was enough for her to get into that room and shut the door. Now, she's still on the phone, with it on speaker, so the other person can hear everything. Now the feeling of dread intensified when suddenly the thing starts pounding on the door so hard she thought it was going to break it down. She of course began screaming in terror, waking up my parents, who also heard the commotion. One night, my sister was in her bedroom, a friend was watching TV in the den, and I was on my computer in the living room. My dad had an amazing sound system in the living room, which consisted of 6 speakers, 2 4-foot, 2 2-foot, and 2 1-foot, with all the fixins, 1980s fixins. As I'm sitting there, I begin to hear a sound with a slight dread feeling. I look up and scream to my friend.
What's happening?
The sound was the amp turning itself on, then the 5-disc CD changer turned on while I watched it, and it began changing through the discs. I got to the 3rd one, and then started clicking around the tracks, then started playing. Since the sound system was so massive, my dad always had the amp turned all the way down. Apparently, little ghost fingers can't turn the thing up, so I had to do it. What song was it, you may ask? I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. That was the last thing it did for a very long time, but I also moved out, so that might be why I wasn't noticing anything new. I actually tested this feeling of dread once. My ex-wife and I were at my parents' house, and we had to get something in the basement, obviously in the far back. I could feel the dread feeling as we walked down the stairs, and since this stuff is so weird, I always test things before I'll even imagine it's paranormal. So, this was another opportunity, and I didn't tell my ex. We get halfway to the back, and I stop because it's getting really strong. I look back at her. She's super pale and said, "We need to get upstairs. Right now."
My paranormal experiences are many and varied, and go back as far as the age of 4 for me. Today I want to share one of the weirder and quirkier experiences I once had. An encounter with a giant bug. I was 11, and I remember that day very clearly. I had nearly a photographic memory as a child, and even memorized the play of Hamlet by the age of 10. My parents and I were involved in community theater, so I was always given a great deal of responsibility. This day, however, was after our theater had tragically burned down. Our production was relocated to a nearby theater, where my best friend and I would sometimes play outside, while others rehearsed. At this time, I should note that I was very interested in entomology, and had a book of North American insects which I took with me everywhere. While we were just sort of scouting around for anything interesting, we came upon what looked like a huge toy ant, metallic, silvery purple and blue in color, just sitting on the wall outside the front door. As we marveled at how it stuck on the wall, I suddenly noticed it was moving. It was really freaking us out. I quickly scanned through my book. Ants, wasps, beetles, mimics, but nothing matched the size, shape, or color. It was really weird. We both got a very disturbing feeling inside. That feeling we get when something's not quite, right. I suggested that since I was the faster runner, I should run and get an adult to prove that we were not going crazy. My friend said he'd stay by the ant, but by the time I ran and got my mom, he was running in. I got scared. He was complaining, and I really don't blame him, although I was upset that the thing had been left. By the time we got there again, the thing was just gone. No sign of it anywhere. I have looked through every single insect book I've ever found, looking for something that matches what I saw. I have yet to find it, or anything close. I still don't quite know what to think about it. 4 inches, metallic. This thing was massive! Anyone out there have any idea whether this was paranormal? I was in Eastern Texas at the time. I think it's possible some sort of cryptid. You never hear about insectoid cryptids, but perhaps this was one? This experience happened the night of July 24th, 2000. And throughout the years, I've tried to uncover what I witnessed. I discovered that this has been going on since at least 1923 in my own neighborhood. In 1987, this same craft, or at least a similar one, almost landed on one of the biggest highways in Pennsylvania, Route 30, which they seem to follow this route. This road runs right through Chestnut Ridge, which is where I think they're coming from. Anyways, I've always been enamored by the stars, so I used to stargaze quite often at my parents' house, out in the middle of nowhere. You could see all the stars clear after everyone's gone to bed. Well, being in the middle of nowhere, there's a lot of critters that will attack you at 2 a.m. So I requested people to sit with me, and we talked about, well, everything. It was always a pleasant experience. We tried to do it under a full moon so we could see anything that might come and try to approach us. While we're just standing there chatting about life, we suddenly hear a very loud, continuous boom coming from the sky to the west, but there was nothing there. However, above our head was a craft about 200 feet long that was just low enough you could easily hit it with a rifle. It was just hovering overhead in silence. The guy with me says, "So, are we really seeing that?" But all I can think was, so that's what it is. At this point, I had seen this thing about 11 times, always flying extremely high, until it would disappear. It very much resembled a blimp, without the gondola, so that's what I always thought it was. I was impressed. They made a blimp that could handle those air pressures and the altitudes? Yeah, this wasn't a blimp. It was cigar-shaped with 3 red lights pulsating slowly on each side. So I ran to get a camera, but it was the year 2000 and all we had was an old 1989 camcorder. And those things need to be plugged in to operate, and an old flash film camera. I grabbed binoculars because I really wanted to see what this thing was. But now, we looked again to the west as the sounds kept getting louder and louder. Following this thing was 5 military-style jets in a V formation. They followed it until they were out of sight. The weirdest part about this is that the jets seemed to be flying in slow motion, even with all their afterburners on. The next morning, I was still awake because it's hard to sleep after something like that. I had taken my friend home early the next morning. When he left the car, he says, "Well, we really saw that last night, didn't we?" I don't recall my response, but I immediately went home and jumped online and looked for any information on what I saw, as I was still convinced that it was some kind of secret government ship. That would explain the 5 jets following it, right? Right? But the weirdness doesn't stop there. I passed out early the next night and woke up pretty early the next day. The sun was just coming out. I got out of my bed like any other day and walked to the house to let our 2 dogs out. I shut the door and suddenly I hear a bird shrieking. I thought to myself, ah, crap. Snowy just killed another bird. I opened the door and Snowy was walking up to the porch, dead bird in her mouth, and she laid it at my feet. It was a very bright blue bird, but not a blue jay. So it was interesting to see that she managed to kill a bird that was so rare to see. Then I woke up. For real this time. It was just a dream. There was no bird. I was pleased because I don't like senseless killing. I get out of bed like I do every other day and walk to the house to let the dogs out. As I step foot to the archway as I had in my dream, I hear the bird shriek. The only difference in my dream is that in this scenario, instead of thinking to myself, Snowy just killed a bird, I instead think, no way. I open the door and Snowy walks in with the dead bird in her mouth and sets it down at my feet. It was the same blue bird as my dream. Hey, if you like these sort of videos, subscribe, hit the bell icon for more video notifications. And while you wait, check out these other videos on the screen right now.